Welcome back, everybody, to 31 2000s horror movies for Halloween, where I'm counting down my favorite horror movies from the year 2000 to 2009. So we've made it to the top 5, people. Yep, we're getting closer to the number 1. I love getting to the top 5 because, like, we're getting to the what for me is the creme de la creme of the decade, and I love when we get to these lists, when we get to the top 5, especially if I have something that not a lot of people would expect to be in the top 5, because I like surprising people in this case. But anyway, so at number 5, we have my favorite found footage horror movie, and a very underrated movie. This is definitely a hidden gem of the 2000s, so at number 5, we have The Last Horror Movie.
Hello.
Not to be confused with The Last Horror Film from the 1980s starring Joe Spinell. They're two very different movies. But yeah, The Last Horror Film... The Last Horror Movie. See, even I'm fucking it up. The Last Horror Movie is my favorite found footage movie. Now, technically you could say that Cannibal Holocaust is my favorite found footage movie, because it's the movie that inspired the found footage genre, or at least heavily inspired the found footage genre, but I don't consider Cannibal Holocaust to be a full-fledged found footage film. Tongue twisters. So while I do prefer it over this movie, The Last Horror Movie is my favorite found footage movie. So, this is a low-budget horror movie, and I love supporting low-budget independent films. This film, it's a serial killer movie, and it opens in an interesting way. The movie starts off as if it's going to be a lame Z-grade horror movie. It's coming across as a slasher movie. It's like the opening of a slasher film, and not just a slasher movie, but a mediocre slasher movie. But that's only like the first 5 minutes, and then it turns to static. And we cut to this guy sitting in front of a camera. The man's name is Max. We soon learn that his name is Max. So yeah, he reveals that he has filmed over this horror movie that you have rented. And he reveals that he's a serial killer.
I think you'll find this much more interesting. You're interested now, aren't you?
So this guy, Max, is a serial killer that's filming his life as a serial killer over this horror movie so that people will rent it and watch it. And that's about it. It's this guy filming his life as a serial killer. So this is a serial killer movie, and it's one of my favorite serial killer movies. I'm very clear about this. Like, the horror movies that get to me the most are serial killer movies and any movie that has to do with water. I almost drowned when I was a kid, and I find serial killers fascinating but terrifying. And The Last Horror Movie is not only one of the most underappreciated serial killer movies, but one of the most underappreciated found footage horror movies.
We're trying to make an intelligent movie about murder while actually doing the murders. Now, I know that doesn't help you, and I know it doesn't justify what I've done, but at least it's interesting. You see, that's the point.
Now, I'm one of those guys that has a hard time with found footage movies, because a bad found footage movie will not allow you to get past the fact that everything's being filmed. But with serial killer movies, for me, they are some of the best found footage movies because they get around that complaint of why is everything being filmed. Because most serial killer found footage movies are filmed from the killer's point of view, or somebody following around the killer. So, like, in most found footage movies, you have people who are in danger filming what's going on. But in serial killer found footage horror movies, the killer is the one filming. So The danger is the one making the movie, so it makes sense why everything's being filmed. So you get past that problem right there.
Okay. I'm sorry about this. It's his first time. Try this.
Yeah, I absolutely adore this movie. I came across it once, and I just fell in love. The character of Max is such a fascinating character because, again, he's killing people, but he's not just filming his life as a killer, he's filming his everyday life as well, interacting with his friends, interacting with his family, filming himself at his job. He's a wedding photographer. For me, some of the scariest moments of a serial killer movie is when we see the killer acting like a normal person. Those moments are so terrifying to me because it just shows these people blending in with society, coming across as a normal person. But we know what they're really like. We know what they're like when no one else is watching, and that's a frightening concept to me. That, serial killers do exist, but they can blend in with society. They could be anybody. Like, a concept, I've said this so many times, but a concept I find terrifying is that you don't know what people are like when no one's looking. That idea is just a frightening idea to me.
I didn't ask not to care about it, but I just don't. And if I don't care about it, how can I think it's wrong? And if I don't think it's wrong, why shouldn't I do it?
Another thing that's great about the last horror movie is this is a horror movie that really includes the audience. It involves the audience throughout the film because Max is always talking to the audience. He's always talking to you through the camera, asking you questions, asking, why are you still watching this movie? There's this great scene where he's killing this couple, but the way he does it is he films the husband first as he's killing the wife, and then he cuts it to the wife and then is killing the man, and then he asks the audience, he's like, did you want to see what was happening? Something along those. He makes a lot of good points throughout this film, and that's scary. It's like, okay, yeah, this guy is making sense, and that's frightening.
I mean, I know you don't approve, and I'm not saying that you do, but are you absolutely sure, without a shadow of a doubt, that you weren't craning a little to see?
He comes across as a likable guy. He's a likable villain in a way, because he's so charismatic, and that makes it scarier for us because we're tricked into liking this guy at certain points, but then we remember he's a monster, so we are put off by him at the same time. And then there's the ending, which I'm not going to spoil here. I talked about this ending in other videos, but I'm not going to spoil it here. I highly recommend checking out the last horror movie. I believe you can follow it on YouTube here, or find it on YouTube. But the ending, for me, is so good. And it's a great ending to a found footage movie like this. Like I said, I won't spoil it here, but I watched this movie with a group of friends, and they loved it too, because it was so different from other movies they saw, other found footage movies they've seen. And when the movie ended, somebody came home, and everyone jumped and looked to the door. They deny it to this day, but no, they jumped. They jumped and looked to the door. They were like, ah! the movie got to them. They deny it, but it got to them. This is a lower budget movie, so some of the effects are a little here and there, but it works. They find a way to make it work. And another thing that's scary about this movie is he hires a guy to follow him around to make this movie, so it's not just like he's filming it himself. There's someone following him around filming his life as a serial killer. That's just an extra element to make it even scarier.
Obviously, I have to ask if there's any type of situation you'd feel uncomfortable with. Women or children, perhaps?
No.
No, you couldn't do them, or no, it wouldn't be a problem?
It wouldn't be a problem.
So, the last horror movie, very underrated movie, definitely a hidden gem from the 2000s. I highly recommend this one. I don't know how many people have seen it. I have a feeling not a lot of you have. If you have not, watch this movie. Go into it, expecting something on the lower budget side, but expect a very good movie. I think you guys will be surprised by this one. It surprised me when I came across it. When I watched it, I didn't know I was going to love it as much as I did, but I love it so much so that it made it into my top 5 horror movies of the 2000s. So yeah, the last horror movie, great Very underrated found footage serial killer horror movie. Highly recommend checking this one out. I mean, there's a lot of great movies on this list, but if I had to recommend one movie, it would be the last horror movie, just because not enough people have seen it. This is a hidden gem. Check it out. Give it a shot and be ready for that ending, because I think that this has one of the best horror movie endings, and for me it's one of the best horror movie endings of a found footage movie. When it comes to found footage horror movies, for my favorite endings, it goes Cannibal Holocaust, then The Last Horror Movie. So yes, check out The Last Horror Movie. Just give it a shot. Give this movie some love. It's so underrated. Check this movie out, and then see if you can get other people to check it out. I really think that this movie deserves more praise.
Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. But then that's the advantage of being a psychopath. You don't have to take any shit from people.